Welcome. Here's a summary of the Array Tools node group. This is a solution for creating complex arrays without having to dive into the geometry nodes menus, but leveraging gizmos. So let's do a quick overview of the tools that we have. So I'll drag in the Array Tools node group, and by default, it's set to line. I'm just going to scale this cube down a little. So I've got a gizmo to drag it out, one for spacing. I've got one to select different axes. And one of these options is for all three at once. And whatever transforms you make here, carry over to the solo versions. I've also got toggling on Raycast. I just need to make sure I select a Raycast object, like so. The next setting is, I'll just turn Raycast off again. There's a little gizmo down the bottom. I can drag that down, and that will turn on randomization. And a few controls here will appear, one for seed, and then maximum and minimum values. I can toggle that on and off down the bottom there. So moving on to grid, same controls here, and a consistency that you'll notice is that anything dark blue is a toggle item, and then anything yellow is a primary adjustment. Anything teal is a secondary adjustment. And I'm going with anything green colored as like a third layer of adjustment. So for this one, it's a global multiplier for this array. And again, I can turn that Raycast on, and that will appear over here. Same controls as before with the random scale and changing the seed. For Radial, I got the same random transforms over here. Let's drag down the radius. I've got this one on the outside for count. I'll just turn Raycast off. And there's two different modes here. One of them is to space by length. And if I toggle this down, it'll space by count. So it'll be a consistent count regardless of the array size versus consistent spacing. This blue toggle circle in the middle also changes the radial array direction. I've also got 3D grid here, just like the grid array, but on 3-axis instead. So same controls as before with a global scale slider. Turning Raycast on in this mode will cast the cubes down to the first object, and then the rest of the cubes will array normally above that. One thing you'll need to make sure of in the Raycast mode is that your mesh is well above the mesh that you're casting onto. Otherwise, you'll get some clipping. You'll see some of these remove. We've also got different object options here. So the only nodes that you'll really need in the modifier menu are these ones over here. So we've got self object, we've got custom object. So if I drag this in and select it, self-explanatory. I've also got use object transforms. If I check that, then scaling Cezanne or rotating it around is going to reflect in the modifier. And then I've got collection. If I hit collection randomize, I can bring in an array collection here, choose that in the collection, and there we go. And again, I can use object transforms and still use this mesh to affect everything. Finally, we've got the curve, which we need to have on an actual curve. So I've created some presets here that you can drag in, including 3D grid, line. You don't want to go through the menus again. So curve, I'll drag that in, and I just have that set up with an example mesh at the moment. We've got this tank tread here, and this has similar controls where I can toggle this some different directions. I can turn on and off Raycast if I want, random size if I want. I've got 3 toggle options at the back here. One is to switch between a mode where you can offset randomly in these directions of your choosing. So I switch that off. The middle one is to toggle between having a uniform direction. And again, when this is using object transforms, I can rotate that. Same in this mode, rotate, scale. And the red one just toggles between cyclic and non-cyclic. We've got a secondary dial here to introduce random rotation and back to normal again. And spacing, same as before. I've also got a checkbox down here for use curve radius for scale. So if I check that, I can go into here and select everything and hit Alt S and scale things up or down, or hit individual points and hit Alt S to scale them up. So that functionality is there if you want it to be. So another nice use case for the curve, this is the same curve as before, is just to go into draw mode with Raycast on, and you can just draw on meshes and still use all of the other tools. It's not a bad scattering option. Also because you can change the geometry underneath and it'll adjust. If it starts popping in and out, you may just need to raise it slightly. Same as before. But not a bad option for foliage. And don't forget that you can use the collection instead. Collection randomize. There we go. And lastly, if you set a bunch of parameters here and you would like to reset them, there are options under the hood. So for this one, we can go curve and curve array reset. If I just drag down and hit backspace, it'll reset that to its default values. So you can come back into this and start editing the spacing. So I hope you enjoy. And if you have any feedback, wishlist items, or things you'd like to see improved with the node, get in touch and let me know.